Hello, friends. My name is Nicole Smith, realtor here in Metro Jacksonville, Florida. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you some of the top reasons why people regret moving to Metro Jacksonville, Florida. Thanks so much for sticking around, friends. And I really want to be real with you. There are things that go on in a city that you don't really know about until you actually move here. And I moved here in 2014 from the Windsor, Ontario / Detroit, Michigan border. And I brought my family with me here because I wanted to relocate and get out of the cold winters that we were having. And I mean, there were so many record colds going on back in 2013. And that is what made us make that decision. We were on our way home from a cruise, and yes, we were driving from South Florida all the way back to Michigan / Canada when we drove through Jacksonville, Florida. And I turned to my husband and I said, hey, you want to move here? The place I was working was going to open up a store there, and I thought maybe I could get relocated. Well, needless to say, he thought it was a great idea. And when I got back to work, asked the manager, how would that process work? He told me, and so we made the decision that when the store opened in October of 2014, that we would be moving to Jacksonville, Florida. And let me tell you, the number one reason was the weather. The number two reason was it was kind of like a really cool adventure, and starting somewhere new, starting a new chapter, and just being on our own without any family or friends was a little bit exciting to us. So being that we have made choices to move, not because we had to, but because we chose to move, is maybe something a little different than what you are considering. And if you are considering making a move to Jacksonville, Florida, I'm a realtor, so I would love to help you and give you that perspective, whether you're living in South Florida or you're coming from Michigan, Ohio, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, or California. I really can give you some really great insights on moving here and what the major differences are from this community, perhaps different from your community. And when I was doing my research here to come up with this video, I really wanted to be realistic with you. I don't want to give you the fluff and all of that. No, there is no city that's perfect. There's no community that's absolutely perfect. And, not talking about politics or religion, because those can be major factors. I'm not going to go there because I think that is personal, and you all should make your decisions personally, what you want to do. So in my research, the number one reason people kind of regretted moving here was the humidity. They didn't realize that all year long there's humidity. In fact, our highest humidity is in December. We're at a record 76%. Yeah, I didn't even know that until I looked it up. It's crazy. But in all honesty, in the middle of the summer, you could literally walk out of the house and your whole body will get this dewy effect all over it. And you just have to realize that's just life. That's just life in Florida. But the pro side to having that dewy feeling is that your skin is going to be a lot softer and a lot more supple. And I don't know if you've ever been to a state where it's more like a desert, like Nevada, for example. Every time I go there, I feel like my skin is going to crack right off. In February, July, it doesn't matter what season, what time of year I've been to Nevada, it dries me up. Even my eyes hurt. So one of the other regrets people have is they are not really prepared for hurricanes. Yeah, I did my research when I moved here, and my research showed that the last hurricane happened was like in 1953, Hurricane Dora. And I'm like, oh wow, this is so awesome. Let's move to Jacksonville. They don't get hit with hurricanes. Well, needless to say, in 2017, I think it was Irma came through. It was 2015, it was Matthew. I mean, it seemed like every year or every other year, if it wasn't a hurricane, it was a tropical storm. We were on that path, but it was kind of a blessing, you know, like sometimes when you're in the midst of a hurricane, you do really get closer to your neighbors, you get closer with your community, and, you know, you have to figure out how to improvise. So I think even though my research showed Jacksonville wasn't a really high hit area for hurricanes, we did experience a few, and it was kind of funny that they just started happening after we moved here, because people were joking with me and said, Nicole, did you bring the hurricanes with you? And I was like, I don't know, I don't think so. But oftentimes they would come when I was out of town and my kids were not with me. They were with either their friends or relatives had come to town to stay with them. And that was a little nerve-wracking, not being there with them when some of these hurricanes happened. But thank God everything worked out and we never had any kind of destruction from hurricanes. We did have power outages and I was home for that. So that one was interesting preparing. So I would say there's some really great apps out there that help you here in the Jacksonville area to prepare for hurricanes. And I'll leave a link in the bio and right down here to show you the app that we like to use here. And it gives you the evacuation routes and everything. And the other thing that some people leave Florida for are sinkholes. Now, I must admit, I've heard of sinkholes, but I wasn't really that familiar with them. And so doing my research, I did recall that a few years ago, there was a sinkhole at our naval station under a sewer system, and the hole was ginormous. But I haven't seen anywhere where the sinkhole has occurred in a residential area and it sunk. But I know in Orlando and in different parts of Florida, sinkholes are prevalent. And I'm going to show you a graph up here showing the map of Florida and where sinkholes are and the danger zones. And as you can see, Jacksonville is not in the danger zone. We're fourth. That's actually a pro for Jacksonville, but Florida as a whole, you gotta consider sinkholes are happening in the state, and they're the #1 state in the entire country for sinkholes. So keep that in mind. Then the next thing that people regret about moving to Florida and in Jacksonville in particular is our limited public transportation. So if you don't have a car and you're relying on the bus system, you need to calculate an hour to 2 hours just to get around, if you can even get around. If you're living in the suburbs, it's not really happening. There are no bus systems in the far stretches of the surrounding suburbs of Jacksonville. So you're going to have to try to find a local job, or if you're younger or your children are in their teenage years and you want them to learn the work ethic of getting a job and earning their own money, then you're going to actually have to drop them off and pick them up or get them a car, which is another added expense to your lifestyle. And I know some of the nicer communities like Nocatee that's been rated the #1 neighborhood on Niche, which if you watch this other video, you can see all the neighborhoods in the top 15 that I did a whole video on all the neighborhoods. But Nocatee was rated #1, and they're in the middle of nowhere. There is not one bit of public transportation out there. And that can be very difficult when you're raising your children, because they're going to have to be dependent on you and you alone, and you won't be able to teach them the city life of getting on public transportation, because there isn't any out there. In fact, out there, they're going to learn about golf carts, and that's a whole new world for people. I personally have never driven a golf cart. I've been on one, but I've never driven one. So that would be something I would have to learn myself if I decided to live in a community that there's all kinds of golf carts. And you know what? One day I might want to move there, because when I'm touring all these 55 and over communities and I see these golf carts, I'm like, this is the life. I love this life. So if you haven't seen my other video, I have quite a few community tours of 55 and over communities if you want to check those out. Another reason people regret moving here is the actual school system. Okay, so when I was doing my research, because at the time my children were 11 and 13 when we moved here, so they were starting the 6th grade and the 8th grade. I did a lot of research, and I ended up being a little terrified of the public school system, so I put them in charter school for the first year. The second year, my son went to a magnet school, and my daughter went to high school, and she went to a local high school, which was really good because it had an IB program, and she got her IB diploma, which just means that she got a really high education within the program. So she was taking like college courses in the high school level. And so that really helped her in her pursuit of higher education. But the school systems here are not the same as Canada. My children never went to school in Michigan, so I can't compare it. But when they were in school, they were telling me that the things they were learning in math class were things they learned 2 years ago. So I felt like it was really a low-level education. So you really have to do your research, but there are some really good private schools here, charter schools and magnet schools. Do your research. And I mean, it depends on what your standards are. The good thing is Florida higher education, post-secondary, has been rated in the top, I think it's the top 10 in all of the United States. So if you are planning on attending any colleges or universities in Florida, we're ranked in the top. So that is a good thing. The other regret that people have is doing their research on crime. So unfortunately, Jacksonville is quite high in some of the communities with shootings, crime, and I guess you want to call it like gang-related crimes. I'm not really allowed to talk about it, but there are quite a few websites that you can go on and do your research and find out about the crime in certain communities and the ratings, and make your decision strategically about where you want to live based on the crime. Now, does crime happen everywhere? Absolutely. It can happen in the suburbs, it can happen in the city. And frankly, I haven't been, too terrified myself of crime, but, I did live in Detroit for many years. So I don't know if I'm a little bit just not, I don't know. To each their own. But when I lived in Canada, crime in Canada is completely different than crime in America. So that being said, our border patrol didn't have guns until after 9/11. So you can see how different of a lifestyle I was raised in. People could rob your convenience store with a butter knife and get away with it. Totally different world. And yes, when people said, oh, do Canadians really sleep with their doors unlocked? They were There were times that happened. I don't think that's happening anymore. But back in those days, yes, that was really happening. People would go to sleep with their doors unlocked and not even think about it. So do your research and make sure that you're working with a professional realtor like myself, who will be able to tour with you in the day, in the night, on the weekends, and really get the vibe of the community you're considering living in, and whether your tolerance for crime or the level of crimes or the type of crimes, because some petty crimes, you know what, it is what it is. People, you know, there's like teenagers that walk around and try to open your car door and steal your change. Those are petty crimes, but they're going to count that on the crime rating. So all levels of crime are different, and depending on, you know, what you want to tolerate. The other regret that people have here is the insurance. Now, what I want to say about the insurance here is car insurance and homeowners insurance. For me, I thought car insurance was a little more expensive here than even when I lived in the Michigan area. But then I started doing the calculations, and it actually turned out that it wasn't as bad here compared to Michigan, because they would redline you. If you lived in certain zip codes in Michigan, your insurance would cost a lot more. Even if you lived across the street and it was a different zip code, you would get a lower. So redlining is a real thing in Michigan. Here, I don't see redlining as prevalent, but my homeowner's insurance on my 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house around, 1,800 square feet, not in a flood zone and not in a hurricane evacuation area, is about $1,200 to $1,300 a year. And that just went up quite significantly. Last year, my insurance was closer to $800, and this year it's gone up. And I actually had to change insurance companies, because the original house, when I bought it, was a brand new construction, and that insurance company only insured homes that were 5 years or less in age. So I aged out of their policy, and I had to get a new policy. And not to mention that insurance has gone up across the board everywhere. I do have customers moving here from South Florida, and their insurance was between $7,000 and $8,000. And they're building a home here in St. John's and moving in very shortly, and their insurance is going to be 3/4 less. So they're over the top happy about that. So I know that it's all relative depending on where you live and where you come from and where your home is actually located, because if you're on the water, near the water, in a flood zone, evacuation area, your insurance is going to cost more. So you would want to do your research, just like when you're about to buy a car. I always suggest doing your research first and looking at the quote for your car insurance. The same goes with your homeowner's insurance. If you're debating between one house and another house and you want to get some quotes, it might be those two different zip codes or flood zones or whatever that may help you decide to put an offer in on one house compared to the other. And that's another reason why you want to work with a realtor like myself. And you know what? I would be really elated if you put a message to me in the comment section, or DM me, or even I'm going to leave you my link to my calendar, and we could set up a consultation, and I can give you a lot more information about what you're thinking about and in your particular journey on whether you're moving from down south or, like I said before, across country or across town, and whether you're thinking about moving in 2 months or 2 years. It's never too soon or too late to reach out to me so we can get a game plan together. So those are the main reasons that people regret moving to Jacksonville, Florida. And I really hope that you found this video useful. And if you do, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you like my channel, subscribe to it. And if there's any information that I haven't covered that you want me to cover, leave a comment below and I would be happy to do some research for you and share with you my perspective. Yes, this is a personal perspective, so everybody's going to have a different outlook on their regrets, but personally, I don't have any regrets for moving to Jacksonville, Florida. I don't like the cold and I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I am so happy that I don't live in the cold and I get this 3 seasons that we get here in Northeast Florida, even dealing with the rainy season, even dealing with hurricanes, even dealing with the humidity. It's all worth it to me, because if you've ever lived in a cold climate, you know that your bones do not thaw out. I mean, it starts getting cold in October, it doesn't thaw out till May. Okay, so guess what? I don't have to deal with that anymore, and I'm very, very happy that I don't have to deal with it anymore. And when I do go back home, I typically don't go back in the cold days, or the cold months, I should say, but I did go back a few years ago in November, and when I saw that snow sprinkling, I was like, get me out of here. And I really actually stayed the night at the airport hotel because I did not want to have to drive in the snow when the snow hit the ground, and it sure enough hit the ground. And I was like, bye-bye, and hopefully last time. So the next trip, not going to be happening in the winter at all. But I thank you all for sticking to the end, friends, and watching this video. And make sure that if you're not living your best life and you're not living where you love, that you start thinking about living the dream in Jacksonville, Florida, like I have. And until next time, make sure you check out some other videos on my channel. And if you have any questions at all, send me a message. Bye for now, friends.